Well, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar. We have a great webinar on tap today. Lots of interesting information, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, just know you'll be able to listen to it on demand. We will be sending out an email post-event that will contain a link to take you to the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's webinar you have a question, please don't wait, don't hesitate. Just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your question. We'll take probably around 15 minutes or so near the end of the presentation, and we'll go through those audience questions. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and kick off today's webinar, Balancing the Competing Demands of Your Customers, Your Teams, and Your Tools. We have three great speakers today. First one is Maddie Stratton, who is DevOps advocate at PagerDuty. And he's being joined by Rachel Byrne, who is PagerDuty's first non-technical incident commander. And then at the end, they're going to be joined by Sonia Gupta, who's developer advocate at InfluxData. Welcome, all three of you. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Great, great. Well, Rachel, I know you are going to be kicking things off with your conversation, so I'm going to put myself on mute, let you get to it.
All right, thanks. So I want you to imagine this. You just got paged in the middle of the night for a service that you didn't build, so you're not quite sure how to diagnose the problem, let alone fix it. So you start fishing for people from different teams, desperately trying to find somebody who can help, adding everybody onto a conference line, slowly getting more frustrated and resentful. And then it's total chaos. You have people talking over each other. It's unclear who's doing what. People are taking contradictory actions, so it's impossible to know what's actually having an effect. Everyone's exhausted and confused. Panic sets in, and people are yelling at each other. Hours go by, and there's still no solution. Finally, the CEO gets word of the outage, tracks down that conference line, and dials in to demand why it isn't fixed yet. Does any of that sound familiar? Unfortunately, I think a lot of us have some sort of on-call nightmare like this. Whenever you have a major incident like that, every minute counts. Downtime can mean losing your customers and financial costs to your business. There's also an extreme human cost associated with the stressful situation of getting woken up in the middle of the night trying to solve something you're not familiar with. So it's important to have an organized approach to come to the fastest resolution possible, minimizing that financial cost to the business and the human cost to your employees. So today I'm going to talk to you a bit about the skills that are really important for an incident commander who takes charge during a major incident, and then how to train people to be an incident commander to help streamline that process. But before I get into that, I want to go over a few definitions. So first, a major incident is any unplanned service disruption that actively affects your customer's ability to use your product. Some more operationally mature companies will have a formalized incident response process. It's basically a run book for major incidents that defines who needs to be involved, the steps you need to take, how you make decisions, etc. And often that formalized incident response process will include a role called the incident commander. And they're the person who's in charge, who's leading the response. They're the key decision maker, and they're the one that keeps communication flowing during the major incident call. Now, whether or not you have a formalized incident response process, it's pretty common to assume that the person best suited to lead during a major incident would be a senior technical leader, because they have the technical expertise to understand what's going on and the authority to tell people what to do. The problem is this isn't scalable. If you have a small group of senior technical leadership that are on call for every major incident, they're going to burn out. I'm here to tell you that you can streamline and scale your incident response process by welcoming non-technical people to serve as incident commanders. And I'm proof that this can be done without compromising response effectiveness. So a bit more about me. My background is mainly in project and product management. I joined PagerDuty as a Scrum Master, spent a lot of time project managing different teams here. And as we said at the top, I'm actually the first person at PagerDuty to become an incident commander without having an engineering background. So I want to talk to you today about the skills that do make a really good incident commander. And a spoiler here, none of the skills that make a good incident commander are technical skills. So the goal here is to relieve some on-call load from your senior technical folks by welcoming in the non-technical people to serve as incident commanders. Now, although I am arguing that you do not have to be highly technical to serve as an incident commander, I will say that it is helpful to have a high-level understanding of your system architecture. You really just want to know how data flows through your system, what each service does in relationship to the end user experience. And for me, this was just a matter of staring at our system diagram for a long time. I even made flashcards trying to memorize the silly names of each of our services and the silly names of the teams that own each of those services. But the key here is I don't have to know how to build or fix anything in the system. I just need that high-level understanding. So first key skill for a good incident commander is someone who is really good at remembering and following a structured process, your incident response process. You want someone who is going to remember the steps that we need to take, the various roles in your process, and who can enforce that in a stressful situation. So a really good fit is obviously project managers. They're usually process people. I'm one of those. But you may have other people in your organization who are really comfortable in this highly structured environment that could thrive as an incident commander. Next really important skill is communication, but it's a particular type of communication. You want people who have a more directive style of communication. When you're the incident commander, you need to be comfortable telling people what to do, no matter what their day-to-day role. Even if the CEO joins the call, I, as the incident commander, need to be comfortable telling them to hold their comments. So you need someone with a certain amount of gravitas to handle that kind of situation. And you want someone who's doing a particular type of facilitation that prevents the group from spending too long debating what we think we should do. You're facilitating the sharing of information, and you're helping the group make a decision as quickly as possible so you can continue moving forwards in the response. Now, this is actually my natural communication style, and I've found that it's not always the best communication style when you're working with teams, but being an incident commander provides a really good outlet for me to flex this style of more directive leadership. So you can think in your organization and on your teams, who is more comfortable in this style? We've found that product managers are typically pretty comfortable telling people what to do. Maybe your people managers may have some of the style as well and could easily fill that incident commander role. Next, you want your incident commander to be really strong in time management. As they're assigning tasks out, they want to give a time box for every assignment. So your incident commander needs to remember to give those time boxes, and they need to be able to keep track of those time boxes and remember to follow up when the time expires. The incident commander is also keeping a regular cadence of information flow. So keeping track of roughly every 30 minutes, I want to make sure I'm checking in on the status of our response effort, checking in on if we want to send any updates to our stakeholders or our customers. Again, this is another core competency of project managers, but you may have, say, more junior people on your team who are really timely, really clock focused, schedule focused, and good at communicating within time limits. Next really important skill for an incident commander is active listening. So the previous skills that I talked about are much more structured and directive in style. All of that needs to be balanced by someone who can humbly listen to experts on the call. So especially when you're working with an incident commander who doesn't have a lot of technical expertise, you're relying on your subject matter experts, the engineers who are working to restore the service, to give you all the information you need to make a really good decision on the action that we should take. So the way this looks is you ask your experts for proposals. You're then going to follow up with questions to make sure you understand the risk, the expected impact of those proposals. And based on that information from your experts, you can make a decision. So you don't want to just be a dictator where you're saying everything I say goes, I don't care about your opinion. You really need to flex those active listening skills to get information from your experts. You also want someone who is flexible enough to modify plans as you gain that new information. So you're not blindly following a process. So here's a summary of those 4 top skills that make a really good incident commander. And the point here is that these are all soft skills that make an incident commander successful. There really is no requirement for an incident commander to have those strong technical skills. I talked a lot about project managers being a good fit because that is my background. We've seen a lot of success with product managers being incident commanders, people managers as well. We have a few of them on our rotation. But think outside the box. You can think about maybe more junior engineers that don't have a lot of technical experience. If they have these strong soft skills, they certainly could be an incident commander. QA engineers might be a good fit because they like working in a more structured environment, are good at working with time limits. So think about folks on your team who have these soft skills and consider training them to be incident commanders for your major incidents. So once you've identified those people in your organization with those soft skills that make them look like a good fit, how do you train them so they're comfortable during a major incident situation? The incident commander role is critical for effective response. And it's a really stressful role because there is so much on the line. There's so much business impact, the human cost of a slower response, that you need someone who's going to be fully comfortable and up to speed to lead the response process. This is really challenging because it is such an intimidating situation. I would say even more so for people without an engineering background who've maybe never been on call before, never participated in incident response. There's a huge cognitive barrier of doubt that makes me think that I couldn't possibly help in this situation. So you need to train your non-technical incident commanders in a really inclusive and welcoming way to help them overcome that fear. So first, we start by clearly defining the incident commander role. And we make a really important distinction for our incident commanders that they are not responsible for finding the solution for the incident or resolving it in any way. Your incident commanders are really expert facilitators. They're responsible for coordinating the response, and they delegate all tasks, which means they're not doing the tasks themselves. An incident commander should never be looking at logs, logging into servers. They need to focus on coordinating the response effort. And this definition for an incident commander really frees up the role to non-technical people. Next, a really good practice we have is hosting regular office hours to explain our incident response process, especially when you're talking to folks outside of engineering. Incident response, major incidents, it can seem like an intimidating black box. So we like to have an open office hours to welcome people across the business to really explain what happens during a major incident. And I try to make clear that major incidents are not an engineering problem. Everyone in the business should care when there's a major incident. Customer support, customer success, they're going to have to talk to customers about incidents. You may want your marketing team to hold certain communications if you're experiencing an incident. For your sales team even, it may be an asset to be able to talk about your effective incident response process. Finance even needs to understand incident response because they may need to work on paying out penalties for downtime. So this is a chance for us to explain that to the entire business. It's also an opportunity to make clear the need and expectations for more help in the incident response process. You can explain that you don't have to be an engineer to help, and we really do need more help for the incident commander rotation. Now, once you've hooked a prospective incident commander that understands the need and expectations for their help, you want to hook them up to shadow the on-call rotation. Now, this is essential for folks outside of engineering that have maybe never been on call before. This will help them build up a feel for that on-call empathy and really see that pain and the need for more people on the rotation to reduce the on-call load for everyone. But you need to make clear that they need to remain a silent observer, so they're not distracting the response effort with questions. But that is a little harsh, so you do want to make sure to follow up with your trainee after a call to see if they had any questions about things that they observed, so that they feel like their learning is being supportive, even when we're asking them not to speak during a major incident. Another great way to start looping in a trainee to help during a major incident is to have them serve as a scribe before they become an incident commander. So the scribe is another formalized role in an incident response process, and they're responsible for keeping a real-time log of the key decisions, the changes in impact that is happening during the response. And this is a really low-risk way for them to start helping. This log becomes incredibly helpful for the post-mortem analysis. But it's not the end of the world if they get somebody's name wrong or miss one of the actions. And the act of writing everything down while the response effort is happening really helps solidify their knowledge of the process. So this helps build their confidence and helps them see that they can actually contribute during a major incident in a real way. Next, we have our incident commanders practice during a Failure Friday exercise. This is something we do every Friday at PagerDuty to test the resiliency of our systems, but it's also an opportunity for us to test our incident response process. So it's in a safe environment in the office during business hours where we're simulating an incident, and it gives your trainee a chance to practice the incident command speech patterns and skills with limited risk, so they can help build confidence and credibility among the responders before they are an incident commander for a real incident. Next, after your trainee has listened into a few calls, maybe done a practice exercise, done a scribe for one or two incidents, you want to hook them up to go on call to be an incident commander for a real incident. But you want to pair them up with a secondary deputy incident commander. So when your trainee gets paged, they're going to join the call and they're going to announce, I am the incident commander, and they'll start acting as such. But they're going to have a deputy there to support them in the background. And it's really important that that deputy supports them in the background, so they're not overriding the trainee's authority. You can send them direct messages on your chat client to send them tips and reminders and help reassure them that they're doing an okay job. This helps them feel supported and helps them gain credibility with the responders. And then the final step is to celebrate. Your trainee has now successfully led a major incident response and is a fully fledged incident commander. They're having a direct impact on the health of your service and the happiness of your customers. And having an additional incident commander on your rotation relieves on-call load for everyone, which means less burnout, better business outcomes. So here is an overview of how we train our incident commanders at PagerDuty. We start by making clear that the incident commander is not a resolver. They're really an expert coordinator. We host regular office hours to demystify our incident response process. We have them listen silently on a response call to just observe, maybe help out as a scribe, keeping that real-time log to solidify their knowledge of the process. Have them practice in a Failure Friday exercise. And finally, we let them be an incident commander, but with the support of a deputy. And the key here is that throughout this process, they feel supported by a community of incident commanders that are cheering them on. All right, well, that's it for me. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Hi, everybody. This is Sonia Gupta. I'm a DevRel at InfluxData, and we are going to talk now a little bit about Influx and InfluxDB and all of the components of what we call the tick stack, which you can see here. I also just wanted to thank Rachel for a great presentation. I learned a lot, and you did a really great job, so thanks for that. So let's look at this slide and see some of the components of the tick stack. We have Telegraph, InfluxDB, Chronograph, and Capacitor, which correspond to the TICK. And you've got Telegraph, which is our agent for collecting and reporting metrics and events. That's pulling in using various input plugins. There are lots and lots of input plugins. Those are written largely by community members, actually. So we encourage all of you to write input and output plugins. In this diagram, our output plugin is outputting to InfluxDB and also to Capacitor. So from InfluxDB, which is our time series database, it is a purpose-built time series database, and that means something really specific. It was built specifically to house time series data. So you're not just talking about a regular relational database. It was built specifically to house time series data, and that means quick write capacity and quick read capacity, because you're going to be writing lots and lots of data points very quickly. You also want to be able to query those points really quickly. So InfluxDB is purpose-built for that. You also have Chronograph, which is our data visualization and querying layer. It's a complete interface for the InfluxData platform. And I've, in the last, I've only been at InfluxData for a little over a month now. And Chronograph was one of the best ways for me to get familiar with the stack, because it helps you to really visualize the data that you're looking at. And then finally, there's Capacitor, which we see here is connected up to PagerDuty. So that Capacitor is an alerting system. It's a real-time streaming data processing engine. So it's doing anomaly detection, machine learning. You can do a number of different things. You can offload downsampling of data if you need to kind of coalesce old data points. That's a really good way to do it, is offloading that capacity onto Capacitor. So that ultimately is connecting up and communicating that data and those alerts to PagerDuty. So this is kind of a good overview of the whole machine and how it works. So let's move on to the next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about InfluxData, about some of the products that we offer, what kind of our core values are, what we're looking to do, and what we try to do for our developers. Can we go to the next slide? So here you have our platform strategy, and we want to be the platform of choice for all metrics and event workloads. So you have these 4 components here that are for common metrics and events platform. We have instrument, observe, learn, and automate. When you're talking about instrumenting, we're talking about things like IoT sensor events. Let's say you have a drone that's collecting lots of information over a span of time. That's going to be sending a lot of data points. So we want to be able to collect those quickly, and that's a perfect example of time series data, because you're wanting to note what the event is what exactly is happening in the event, but also need a timestamp for when that happened. The observe component, business metrics, you want to know where in your business processes there are slowdowns or failures even. So InfluxDB is built to help you observe those business metrics. And then learning, applications, custom logs, and traces. You want to be able to learn where there are failure points in your application infrastructure. You want to be able to learn from your logs and traces and have that data collated and collected in an efficient manner. So InfluxDB is designed to allow you to do that. And then finally, automation. We're talking about, this is DevOps, right? This is where you can use InfluxDB to facilitate DevOps. We're talking about infrastructure and application metrics so that you can take what you've learned from your custom logs and traces and actually act on it. We want to allow you to be able to develop actions based upon what you've observed and learned so that you can automate those actions quickly in your infrastructure. So let's take a look at the next slide. So this instrumenting, we want you to be able to quickly ingest data from everywhere and efficiently store that data at scale. That is what a purpose-built time series database is going to do for you. Let's go to the next. And in observing, we want you to be able to support real-time querying, analysis, and visualization of large data sets and provide time-based functions for change over time analysis and control. This really goes to speaking about your business metrics. and analyzing those business processes. Next. And in terms of machine learning and anomaly detection algorithms, this learning process, we want to be able to provide streaming analytics for data in motion. Capacitor does a lot of that data processing, and there is actually, we do offer a webinar on Capacitor, I believe, and that's a really good place to learn about some of these things. And then can we go to the next? And then automation. Again, this is your DevOps practice. And we want to provide automation and control functions and evict and downsample data. One of the things that InfluxDB is really good at is getting rid of old data. When you're talking about time series data, you're not talking about the same kind of data that you would have in a relational database. You're talking about large volumes of constant data flowing into this database. So you're probably going to end up with at a point where you have a lot of old data that you don't need. So InfluxDB allows you to set retention policies to automatically evict that data. So that's not something that you have to manually go in and do. That retention policy will handle it for you. Also, downsampling of data. Let's suppose you want to keep some of that old data, but you don't need to necessarily store those individual data points. You kind of want to understand what was happening in that data in the aggregate. You can downsample that data. And that's something that InfluxDB allows you to do. Can we advance to the next slide, please? So we're going to look a bit at our products and offerings. There is the open source is the core of what we do. So our OSS is really something that the company focuses on. It's something that I am personally committed to. This is what I do for a living, is work with our open source community. So the components of that stack are the InfluxDB database, Telegraph, which is our collecting and reporting metrics and events agent, and then Chronograph and Capacitor, Chronograph being that data visualization layer, and Capacitor, which is our real-time streaming data processing engine. If you're interested in playing around with these, since it is open source, one of my recommendations to you would be to check out our sandbox. That is probably the fastest way to get up and running. It actually has all 4 of these components wired up together, and you will be able to instantly see how they work together. You even will be able to collect metrics from InfluxDB itself, from the Docker containers, as well as from your CPU. You can look at CPU utilization, a number of other different statistics and measurements, because Telegraph is already wired up to collect that information in the sandbox. So it's really pretty cool. It's a good way to get your hands around the stack and kind of get some exposure to it and get started. Next. So we also have commercial offerings. So everything that you get in OSS, but with clustering, manageability, and security. So we have 2 offerings. Those are Influx Enterprise and Influx Cloud. Influx Enterprise is what you'd pick if you wanted to host on your own servers. Influx Cloud is one-stop shopping. We handle everything for you. And those allow you to have clustering, manageability, and security, which is the only thing that's really different from the OSS version. Next. So what's our core focus at InfluxDB, and what's my personal core focus as a DevRel? Developers and builders, you are the people that we are working for. You are the people that we care about. The first thing we're really concerned about is developer happiness. We want to make sure that our products are easy to use, that you have your questions answered, that the number of roadblocks that you encounter are virtually none when you're getting your environment set up and in using the products. So developer happiness is the #1 thing that drives us. Also, something our CTO calls the fastest time to awesome. We want to make sure that you get up and running really quickly so that you don't have to spend a whole lot of time tooling your environment, making sure different configurations are set up. We want to make sure that out of the box you are up and running as quickly as possible. When I got the sandbox up and running, I was ready to go within 5 minutes. So fastest time to awesome, we want to make sure that we remove those roadblocks for developers. And then also ease of scale out and deployment. And this probably applies a little bit more to enterprise. We want to make sure that this is scalable and that you can deploy quickly and easily. And that is something that we take really seriously when we're looking at our enterprise offerings. Next. I think that's it for me. So I think next up we're probably going to hear from Maddie Stratton at PagerDuty. And thank you all for listening. It's been great.
Thanks, Sonia. Yeah, so Sonia said, my name is Maddie Stratton. I'm a DevOps advocate here at PagerDuty. Going to talk a little bit about the PagerDuty platform, and Rachel already talked a little bit about how we do things at PagerDuty. Talk a little bit about our product, and how it might be able to help you dealing with these wonderful incidents. So in this age, kind of when we think about micro moments, a split-second experience defines consumer perceptions of your brand. What you need is you need a platform for real-time action. So there's queued work, which is totally fine for ticketing systems, but there's work where every second matters, right? And this is where ticketing doesn't cut it anymore. So we think about the old way versus the new way. So in the old way, we have this method, this reactive method of queued work. This is where teams are siloed. They're focused on manual, repetitive tasks and toil. That's one that wastes time, and time is now our most valuable currency. So we super don't want to be wasting it. Today, how you're responding to real-time issues, it has to be automated, right? It has to, the volume of data today, as we just were talking about, it's past a point when this is manageable by humans. Sorry, not sorry, it's true. And as such, organizations now, we realize you have to adopt new operational methods. So what does that mean? So we're putting in place monitoring to be more proactive in detecting events. We're investing in automation to instantly route that data to the right experts who can resolve issues. And we're distributing operational responsibilities and democratizing that data to facilitate faster speed, collaboration, and learning. These are all DevOps principles, and they're all part of the new way of doing operations that leading companies are following. So PagerDuty, we consider ourselves a platform for action, right? So what does this mean? This new world is generating more signals that can overwhelm traditional operational processes and workflows. That stuff is coming in from social, from containers, microservices, network, security, databases, all of this data we're talking about, all of these digital signals, they're all coming in. So we have to be able to harness that digital data. We have to be able to make sense of that digital data. And then we have to be able to respond and engage the teams. So is this turning signal into action? So PagerDuty helps make sense of this complexity by ingesting all these different digital signals in one place. You've effectively defined your processes, and then communication is the second greatest roadblock to digital transformation. PagerDuty drives real-time collaboration and communication between these siloed organizations. So again, aggregate signals, make sense of it, engage the responder, orchestrate the response, and then it's continuous learning, right? Analyze and learn. PagerDuty learns as you use it more with machine learning and event intelligence. So platform, right? We're the platform for real-time work. This is the world we live in, is real time. Our platform orchestrates this cross-functional people in real time, turning these signals into action and opportunity. And we've built our products on top of an enterprise class platform. It gives you visibility into digital service performance. It powers any workflow you have. We've got over 200 integrations. It's architected for scale, for reliability, and security. We have large Fortune 100 companies with thousands of users on our platform. Don't worry about it. We built a platform that can handle your scale. I don't care how many events you think you have. We can handle it. We've handled more. Right? This empowers teams to staff the right resources to manage their operational issues when it comes to on-call management. So on top of that, though, we've got product capabilities that turn all this data into insight and action. So it's not just about wartime. It's not just about when you're responding to incidents. It's about how can you be proactive? How can you learn? How can you analyze these things that are happening? Event intelligence. This applies machine learning to your data to surface and relate critical insights. This is tightly integrated with automated, modern incident response workflows to engage the exact right teams. But we also provide this layer of analytics and business visibility, so leaders can understand the immediate and long-term health of services teams and response and understand how to improve. So what does this mean, right? So part of this is understanding the business impact when it comes to incidents. What is the, not just the technical impact, but what is the business impact? But likewise, what are the human impacts? How are your teams, how can you measure burnout? How can you understand alert fatigue, event fatigue, on-call fatigue, and the actual health of your teams who are responders? These things matter. So PagerDuty was founded, right, to think about helping DevOps and IT ops teams minimize the complexity involved, right? They have to own what they build. But the ease of use of our product is really help customers kind of organically extend our products to different use cases. Whether those use cases are, we've seen it happen in SecOps, we see it within customer support, business operations and industrial operations, and all sorts of other ones as well. Internally, we also see from a biz ops perspective, for example, our marketing team leverages PagerDuty to be able to understand impact to incidents that may arise due to some of our marketing issues that might come about. So really, to kind of drive it home, PagerDuty helps empower teams to act in real time, right? So you have to, as an organization, these teams have to be empowered to make sense of data and take action on it. So the platform for action empowers the teams across all the business functions, getting data in the hands of the right people at the right time. The PagerDuty solution, we were the first in the market to bring people, process, systems, and data together to drive these cross-functional response orchestration and rapid incident resolution and even prevention across DevOps, IT ops, security, support, BizOps, and industrial. So we're happy to answer any questions that we might have along those lines. And I think we're open for question time.
All right, great. Just a quick reminder to the audience, if you have a question for any of our panelists today, please go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions. We have about a little more than 20 minutes to go through questions, so lots of time here. First question, which I believe is for you, Rachel. Do you recommend creating dashboards and or alerts to the whole team, including the incident responders?
I missed the beginning. Could you please repeat that for me?
Sure. Do you recommend creating dashboards and or alerts to the whole team, including the incident responders?
It's important for the people responding to the incident to have the information they need in real time to solve the issue. It's also important not to be blasting your entire company with this information. You really just want to engage the people that you need to solve the problem with the information required, so you're not burning out your entire organization. But there is also value in having data after an incident is resolved, so you can analyze across multiple incidents to see sort of systemic patterns in your architecture and make those longer term improvements.
Okay, great. Let's see, the next question I think is also for you, but I'm not entirely sure. Have you ever collected data from the code in development to determine if the performance of the code was good enough to be deployed into production? Collecting
data from the code to determine if it's
good enough to be deployed. Yeah.
That's not a process I'm familiar with.
Okay. All right. Great. So, guys, that's plenty of time for questions. If you have a question for any of our panelists, go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel. Those were actually the two questions that we had in so far. So we'll wait a minute or two and see if we get any more questions from the audience. But while we're waiting, I do want to remind the audience that today's event is being recorded. So if you miss any or all of it, you will be able to access it on demand. Okay, we just got another question in here. Why would I use InfluxDB to store metric data? Can I use a relational database?
I can answer that. You could use a relational database, but what's going to happen is over time, it's not going to scale. People have tried to use, for example, even non-relational databases to store this information. A time series database is built very specifically for that kind of database, for that kind of data. There are not going to be any external dependencies with InfluxDB. We've purpose-built it with that in mind. So InfluxDB has, it all kind of boils down to, this is going to sound like I'm talking about an episode of Silicon Valley, but it's true, a compression algorithm that InfluxDB has implemented that allows you to read and write data really quickly. So time series data is different from relational data, your regular relational data, because relational data is coming in at a pretty, it probably isn't coming in quite as quickly and in large volumes that time series data is coming in. So you really want a database that's custom built, that's equipped to handle that volume. The other component of this is writes. Not just writes, reading, right? You want to be able to query that really quickly. InfluxDB is custom built to be able to do that much more quickly than a relational database could do it. The other component that I mentioned was retention policies. You want to be able to drop, because you have such large volumes of data, you're not going to be interested in holding on to that forever. You want to be able to drop that data as quickly as possible based upon the retention policy that you've set. So InfluxDB is custom built to allow that as well. So those are some of the benefits that you'd have over a traditional relational database.
All right. Excellent. Okay, we've gotten another question in here. Can you talk a little bit more about the way I can ingest data into InfluxDB? Do I have to use Telegraph? So Sonia.
I'm not sure of the answer to that question. I know that there are a number of, there is a Telegraph plugin that specifically outputs to InfluxDB. There's a Telegraph plugin that outputs to a number of other data stores as well, not just InfluxDB, but I'm not sure if you actually, InfluxDB is built to work well with Telegraph, but there are other ways to input your data into InfluxDB. I don't think you absolutely have to use Telegraph to do that.
Okay, great. Let's see, next question. How do you recommend I change the internal culture to include incident responders? I guess maybe that one is for Rachel.
Right, or this is Maddie. I could probably take it. So I want to make sure that I got the full beginning of the question, because Rachel a little who's gonna this. So it's, how do I change my internal culture for?
How do you recommend I change the internal culture to include incident responders? So making them part of the party.
Sure. Okay. So one of the best ways to do it is, I know it sounds a little bit kind of oversimplified, is to just start doing it. The hard part about it is that the culture requires the authority of the incident responder, right? And what we found when we if you go through the growing pains at PagerDuty, and I think Rachel kind of talked about this a little bit, is that at first we had most of our incident commanders were engineers, and they tend to be good at that. And that may be the place that you start, but the biggest trick of that is making sure that it's understood when an incident commander realizes they have to take off the incident commander hat and put on the subject matter hat, that another incident commander is brought in. You can't do two jobs at once. You have a lot of what we've learned from incident management, incident responses come from first responders, and in fire departments they have a saying. So incident commanders in a fire department have the incident commander wears a white helmet, and they have a saying that says, if you see someone with a white helmet, pick up a wrench and hit them over the head with it. So I don't recommend that you hit your coworkers with wrenches, but it's a matter of making sure to help see each other when you do see your incident commander. Because as you start with a small team, and that's my next thing I'm going to suggest, is start this with, don't necessarily try to do this across your whole organization. Maybe start with one team and say, on this team, we're going to start following incident command process, and we're going to work it out. And you have to help your incident commanders, because we're engineers, we fall into this trap of wanting to solve the problem. So the subject matter experts and the scribes and the other people involved have to help the incident commander see when they are going down that path, and either say, you either need to hand that hat off to somebody else to take over incident commander, because you are actually the best equipped person to be the subject matter expert. And that's important too. By no means, if the incident commander says, you know what, if we figure out that Rachel's incident commander and she really is the best person to solve this problem, we don't say, oh, too bad, I guess Rachel can't try to solve the problem. We say, okay, we need to now put on a different hat. And then finally, the most important part, I think, is, again, that retrospective, is after you have incidents, make sure you're doing a retro, not just on what happened that caused the incident, but also how was the incident resolved? How did you follow your process? What can you do better next time?
Okay, great. So just a reminder, if you have a question for our panelists, go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll just keep right on rolling as long as we've got questions. Next one, can I use Grafana dashboard with InfluxDB instead of Chronograph?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, a lot of our users use Grafana instead of Chronograph. So, Grafana is a great product and a really wonderful partner. So yeah, absolutely, you can.
Okay, great. All right, great. So as I said before, if you've got a question, go ahead and submit it. We are, that was the last of the questions that we had in our repository here. So While we're waiting to see if anybody else has any questions for our panelists, I reminded you all already that today's event is being recorded, but I also want to let you know that today's recording is also going to be living on the DevOps.com website. So if you missed any or all of the event, as I said, it will be on demand on the website. Just go under the webinars tab, under on demand, and it should be right there waiting for you. Okay, just got another question in. I like the idea of an incident responder. It seems like it will help us developers stay focused on our work. Rachel, what do you think about that comment? Rachel?
I'm
Are you
unmuted. Yes.
All right.
So yes, that's actually one of the main values of having an incident commander. It allows your responders to focus on actually solving the issue. Meanwhile, your incident commander can give updates to your stakeholders and really protect the response team from all those distractions. It also keeps the responders really focused, so we're getting proposals for actions we could take. We're then deciding which action we're going to take, and we're doing one thing at a time. So we're kind of following the scientific method to see what's actually having an effect. So we're not just doing a bunch of stuff to try to see if it's going to fix itself. We're having that more structured, focused approach with the incident commander's lead.
All right, great. Do you, in your experience, Rachel, have you seen there's been a lot of pushback from organizations in having this incident responder position, or has it been mostly welcomed by companies who do take this approach?
We've seen for the companies that are most mature in their incident response process, they do adopt this role. And as you're getting started to develop your incident response process, you really want to start by adding an incident commander. There's a whole suite of different team roles you can have in an incident response process, but having the incident commander really is the most important one that you want to start with.
All right, great. Okay, last call for questions for our panelists. If you have one, use your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to it. And while we're waiting, again, as I said earlier, the webinar is going to be available on demand. The webinar, everybody who's registered for the webinar will be receiving a link post-event that will contain they'll receive an email. I'm having trouble getting this out. They'll receive an email that contains a link that they can use to register or listen to the webinar on demand. So looks like that's going to be it for the questions today. So Rachel Byrne and Maddie Stratton and Sonia Gupta, thank you all for today's presentation. Lots of good information, a great topic, and I know the audience got a lot out of it. So thank you all very, very much for the presentation today.
Thank you for having us.
Great. I also want to thank the audience for joining me today, and I'm going to officially give you 10 minutes back in your day. So with that, this is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody.